What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dropping News and Los Santos podcast. And today I have a reoccurring guest. Please give us a quick background and tell us about yourself and tell us what this episode is going to be about as well.
Thanks, Santos. It's an honor to be on your podcast again. My name is Dr. Dice. I'm a former Navy SEAL, paramedic, firefighter, father of five. I want to talk about my upcoming book release. It's something that I've been working on for a couple of years now, and I'm hoping I can reach out and help a lot of people. Today's podcast, I want to kind of delve into how this happened, how I got here, the genesis of this story, and what ultimately, what the fuck am I trying to do? So let me start at the beginning, man.
And tell us the name, the title.
The name of the book, sure, man. And let me tell you about getting a book published. There's a lot of pushback from the publisher about every fucking thing. They want to push back, like, that's illegal, you can't say that. And believe me, I'm trying to get as much in this book as possible, and so it's a fight. So even the title is a fight. Right now, the title I've given them is After the Trident, a Navy SEAL's Descent into Meth, Mayhem, and Madness. If that flies, that's what you're going to see on the shelves in a couple months. And, we're going to send you a link, get on the mailing list. You'll get first access to the first copies. I'll even give you a discounted rate. Look for that in the comments below. But this book, it's been a labor of love. It's been, a lot of self-disclosure. I try to bear it all. And as a matter of fact, Santos, thanks for having me on today specifically. It's 15 years in recovery today for me.
That's awesome, man.
That's fucking you. I'm so grateful for my life today. I was at a place of just sheer dire hopelessness before then. I mean, I remember being in a place where I would see like a cool movie preview comes out and it goes, coming next summer, and I go, I'm probably not going to be alive next summer. It was in a place where I was at the end. I knew my timer was ticking down and it was going to be over. And from there to here has been an incredible, crazy trip. And so I wanted to capture that and share it. In recovery, we learned that our greatest gift to share with someone is our story, our experience, strength, and hope. If we can get that out there, someone out there is hurting, and someone out there might get something out of my story that gives them hope. And helps them just merely reaching out. So if someone were to read my book and they get to the end and they go, holy fuck, this guy somehow found a way. Maybe I can too. And there's some links at the end, some ways to reach out, and some way to get some help for you guys out there.
Now tell us your whole background from the get-go and your career and how it ended up of you being an addict and all that stuff.
Sure. The book delves into the nitty-gritty of my childhood. I'm the oldest of 8 brothers and sisters. We were raised out in California, started off in San Diego, transitioned to Northern Cal. I grew up in a small town of Horse Creek, California, population 89 motherfuckers. I mean, it's a tiny little town.
That's a village.
Yeah, with 10 people in my family, so over 10% of the population's in my family. And I was a teenager, and there was one chick within 100 miles of my age, and she didn't like me, so it was not it was a lot of adventure, a lot of chaos, a lot of mischievousness. I drove my parents crazy. I mean, they were contacted by not only store owners for me stealing stuff, from neighbors who are literally catching them in booby traps I had set around the neighborhood. They were contacted by law enforcement because I would regularly try to run away. They got contacted by the FBI because, this whole me and another buddy tried stealing handguns from a firearms store. I mean,
I thought you were going to mention the one you and your buddy, your friend was lost in the mountain.
Oh, that was search and rescue. That was. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I did growing up to drive my parents fucking bananas. That when on the regular of my kids, I'm watching them grow up. I'm waiting for them to fuck up. And, knock on wood, they have not done the shit I did as a kid. So I'm so grateful for my life so far. So, kids, if you're listening, you're doing awesome. Keep it up.
Yeah, I feel the same way in that aspect because I'm sometimes I had regrets towards my parents. I'm man, I didn't think I was that bad. But then I watched a few home videos. Mm-hmm. I beat my own ass. I didn't like the way I sounded. I'm oh, look, no wonder my father got lost his hair early. I was oh my God, I would have kicked my own ass.
Man. I know. We go for a parent. So, my mom's still with us. Mom, I love you out there. I am so sorry for being such a crazy kid. But and all the kids would. I'm the oldest of 8, and every single one of those brothers and sisters could write their own books. I mean, we've all had amazing lives. Most of us are in recovery, and so it's been a journey. It truly is, and I am so grateful. But the book kind of takes you through that whole journey of childhood, up into the mountains, running away from home. Ran away when I was turning 16. I got into college, a junior college in San Diego. I had an Indiana Jones hat on, walking around campus, Mesa College in San Diego. You know,
Just a hat, no whip.
no whip. The whip was it. You know, later I had a whip in my Jeep, but I had a leather jacket. And you know, Indiana Jones is my hero. I fucking wanted to be Indiana Jones, and I was out in life, chasing life. And you know, as you can imagine, walking around campus, at 16 years old with the Indiana Jones hat in a college campus, I still wasn't getting laid. Didn't understand that very much then, but I was very fired up, you know, and really chasing life. And one thing led to another. I got involved with the Slavic dance group, and we performed around San Diego professionally. And part of that, the deal was every 2 years we got to go over to back then Czechoslovakia, and we got to train for the dance training. So a lot of those Russian lifts and slaps and dancing with axes and really some
Really?
crazy stuff. Yeah,
That's cool.
I'm not Slavic or Czech or but I could dance, and so and then they had girls in the group, so that was another plus. And I ended up touring with them, and we went overseas in Europe. And this is one tale in the book that I'm fighting with them to let me keep the story in the book. So I'm gonna just put it out there now. Devil may care if I get the consequences because it involves a theft of a national treasure. But I was in Greece, and we were in Athens, and I was in this hotel room, and I can't believe I'm sharing this. In this hotel room, and I'm looking out the second story window. Up there, up on the mountain, you see the Acropolis all lit up. You see it on postcards out there. It's all well lit. And I decided to put my Indiana Jones hat. It's like 2:30 in the morning. My girlfriend's asleep, and I decided to climb over the railing and out the window because I don't want people in the lobby to see me. And I sneak across the city and I scale the cliffs of the Acropolis. My Indiana Jones hat and leather jacket. And I get up there and I'm sneaking around the Acropolis ruins looking for an artifact, like Indiana Jones would. I find a piece of marble there. It has inscriptions on it. And I pick it up, and it's marble, and it's super heavy, and I try to scale down the cliff with it. And I keep losing my grip because it's too heavy and it's awkward. So I tuck it in my belt, and one of the little cables that light up the Acropolis at night on the cliffs is big, like a giant, thick, 2 inches thick, industrial light cable goes off the cliff and kind of drapes out into the unknown, into the darkness. And so I climb on the cable, and I slide down it off the cliffs, not knowing where I'm going to end up. I end up on this lighting structure, and I climb on the lighting structure, and I sneak back through town and climb up the outside of my balcony and into my apartment, my little suite there. And I'm looking all beat up, and have the stone. And I put it in my luggage, I put my hat down, and I creep into bed. And I was like, and that was me. I was 18 years old.
Do you still have it?
No, that's in the book. It's in the book.
Okay.
It's in the book. And you might say that's when the curse started, but there was a lot of things that took place, and you can see the spirit of adventure was there, but this twisted sense of, morality that kind of grew up with my whole life of if, no one saw it, it didn't happen. And, what is truly right and wrong,
If Indiana Jones wouldn't have stolen it,
he
would have said it belongs to the museum.
Oh man, but that's one tale, and there's all these different things that happen, like near misses, and I think one night I was back in the SEAL teams, and we're on board the Austin, and there was a high sea state, and the boat's tossing and turning, and we're walking up on the walls, and me and one of my swim buddies, and I was like, hey, I got an idea, let's go check out. There's a port that's fairly high on the water line that we can go out and look at the storm. And we're on total blackout. The ship's all dogged down because it's a high sea state. And we go out there and we open this port, and I lean out. It's a full-size doorway, and I open it up and I lean out and I look to my left. I can see the waves above the portal, above the door, and I look to the left and I can see the waves above on the left. I go, dude, Hornet, come here, look out at this. This is crazy. As he leans out the window, the full 6-foot doorway fills with solid stream of water because it was a swell. We were in between swells, and a swell had come in and filled our whole space up, like as big as this room, fills it up, washes us into the next space, fills that space up. Totally, we were instantly underwater in the ship because we were flooding the compartments. And as the swell passed, the water started exiting those two compartments and sucking us out the door. And we're both hanging on and struggling to get that latch shut. And then we stumble out of the apartment going, holy shit, fucking, shit's gonna go down for this. So we ended up sneaking out of that compartment, and these two sailors walk by and they see us, and those are the fucking Navy SEALs. They must have been out swimming. You guys are crazy. We're like, oh shit, just let that go. And we got away with that. But just one little close call, I don't want to say it's stupidity, but just kind of looking for trouble and finding it as we went along. The book follows different stories like that. It follows me through Buzz. It follows me through the different injuries I sustained throughout being in the Navy. The book I look into a platoon's makeup, talk about what we went through in a platoon. I butted heads with my leadership quite a bit. I was 24 by the time I made the SEAL teams, and when you go through Buzz at 24, you're actually one of the older guys there. And so when I got in my first platoon, I was actually one of the older guys in my platoon. I didn't act like it, I was still the most mischievous guy there trying to get away with shit. In the book, through the SEAL teams, the misadventures of the SEAL teams, I began at dabbling. I was drinking a lot, as sailors do, but I began dabbling as the years went by in coke and ecstasy, as you do when you start partying hard. And the times I used to, play with those chemicals got closer and together. And I could tell that the writing on the wall was sooner or later people get popped for this shit. I was partying harder and harder. And re-enlistment's coming up. I began to wonder if this is the thing for me. And there was an incident that went down in the SEAL teams. And I cover it in the book, but it's a story of betrayal, of leadership, just a story of thinking someone has your back and they don't. And it all goes sideways, and I almost ended up losing everything. But when I got through that, I was like, between that and my newfound drug habits, and we weren't at war, this is pre 9/11, I began to think that the SEAL teams, which I've tried so hard to be, wasn't for me. And to be honest, I wanted to party. We weren't at war. I wasn't doing what a SEAL was trained to do. I wasn't fighting. It felt like I was eternally sharpening my knife and never actually getting.
What year was this time frame?
This is like 2000, 2001, right before the fireworks kicked off. I just would have stuck around a little longer, but it was right around that area, 2000, and I was getting ready to make a decision: am I going to enlist or not? And I decided to get out, and a lot of things were transpiring there. My drug addiction was really kicking off. I was being pulled in these different directions. I got involved with this multi-level marketing group that I was going to wear a suit, make $1 million. Ended up buying a convertible BMW sports car, and I was just zipping around in that everywhere. High on coke, just kind of trying to live the fast life. There became a point where the money was running out because, it takes a lot of money to support a big coke habit back then. And the money was running out, and I had this brilliant idea of, maybe if I were to veer under a semi, just the right angle, the semi would take me out, but there would be some money involved in that kind of accident. Late at night, a big FedEx truck went by, and I would just kind of take that car under the semi. It would work out. And you have these, drastic times, drastic measures kind of attitude, and that kind of stinking thinking really begins to make sense to you. And it's funny how I made sure before I was going to try something like that, I was sober and stopped doing coke for a while and clear-headed. And when you're an addict, it's funny, your thought processes, even when you're completely sober, are still warped. And a crazy plan like that still made sense to me, even when I was so cold sober. And I'll let the readers of the book kind of hear the end of that story, but that kind of crazy, uh, drastic time for drastic measures was kind of how I lived by. I would go one direction, go hard, and then once I got myself jammed up, I would take some dramatic jump to try to change course. And it was almost like I kept falling back on different plans, different plans. One thing about drug addiction that I've learned through experience is that over the years, it's progressive in nature. You may start out with just drinking with the boys, and then you find friends you drink more so they can hang with you, and then you find friends you drink more often, or you might jump between groups of friends who like to party. And then you find a select group of friends who like to do coke, and a group of friends who like to do ecstasy, and then eventually, for me, and it's funny, the jump from like say coke to crystal meth was financially driven. It really was. It was meth was a lot more inexpensive than cocaine, and so it made good financial sense. So I switched over and began part of that. But I know, and it's just how you just responded to that. Jesus, crystal meth. It has a bad rep, and rightfully so. Like your alcoholic friends, a lot of them will frown on people who do coke. So you stop hanging out with those ones. You just hang out with people who are okay with doing coke. And those coke friends will frown on people who do meth. So you stop hanging out with those friends. So now you're stuck with just your tweaker friends, and that group. Out of them, you don't want to be the guy who uses all the tweaks. So now you end up just by yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what addiction really is slowly cutting off pieces of your life until you're just by yourself in your garage doing that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm making giant jumps in my story here, but to kind of get to the point that all of this downward trajectory is progressive in nature. It keeps getting darker and darker. And there are many places in my life where I should have been like, okay, it's getting bad enough. I got to change my ways. But there's always like another trap door to open and drop down further. There's always another level of hell you can start visiting. And I kept, in each subsequent chapter of this book, it gets darker and darker. Like me finding different ways to kind of ultimately end up hating myself. Gosh, there's some turning points in there about when do you say when. There's one in there where and this is hard for me to share about. That remember that H1N1, that swine flu pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was tweaking hard during that time, and I would disappear for days at a time. And during that time, I was married, and I had a 2-year-old at home, and he was at daycare that day. I remember getting a call from the daycare. When you're all twacked out like that, you don't answer the phone. You let it go to voicemail, and you pick it up, and you answer it, and you're listening, and it's the daycare, and they're saying that there's been an exposure to one of the technicians or employees of the daycare, and that they're having everyone come pick up their kids. And I'm like, when you're all spun up like that, you're like, whoa, my son needs me. My son's in trouble. I gotta get to him. But I'm all, I'm in this state. Maybe my wife will get to him. And my wife calls and it goes to voicemail, and I listen to her message, and she's out of the area. I have to get him. There's no one to get him but me. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm hitting the pipe, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to get my shit together. I got to get my son. I got to get my son. Okay, I just got to, one more hit, all right, I gotta save my son. And all right, I just got to get out of this room. And for 3 hours, I'm trying to get out of that room, put this shit down, and the phone's blowing up, and everyone's calling me, and I'm trying to put the pipe down, and there's tears coming down from my eyes as I'm trying to put the shit down. My son needs me. And Santos, I remember pulling out my phone and turning it off, and pushing it under the bed, and just fucking using. And that's when I knew. I mean, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I knew I was an addict. I knew I was a slave to this new master. My entire life, I had trained to be a hero. I mean, I had trained for my entire life. And on this day, my son needed me, and I could not be there. Could not get out of there. And if you could hear like a spirit break, like my spirit broke. I hated myself. I stopped looking in the mirror. From then on, whenever I drank, whenever I used, it was like at a different kind of intent. It was like I wasn't putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger, but I didn't care if I didn't wake up. And if you drank like I drank, and if you looking at a bottle of vodka and there's like that much at the bottom, and you shouldn't finish this bottle, and you just go take it. You don't care what happens. That's the level at which I reached it after that point. It was like a very passive form of suicide of just trying to just hate myself to death. And that was like the very beginning of like me realizing that this is where it's gone. It wasn't my bottom. I still had to keep going deeper, but that was me realizing I'm an addict. This disease is going to kill me. And that was the era where I was looking at previews, not thinking I was going to be alive. Like I was on a time bomb that was slowly, the numbers were getting way shorter. I didn't know which ball of flames I was going to go out on, but I was certainly headed in that direction.
Goodness.
Yeah. And then there's, that's the first part of the book. But then there's the redemptive side. This is a story of redemption. This is a story about someone from an early age kind of realizing his his wires were a little crossed, and he had let's just say somewhere along the line I had learned to make myself feel better. I have to take something from the outside, put it in me to make me feel different. That was the pathway, and along that same journey, I had always been programmed that the end will justify the means. It doesn't matter how you get it done. You just, as long as you succeed, that's all that matters. And that works well for a warrior. That works well for a lot of things, But it causes a lot of chaos in your life. Like I was the type of guy that you could depend on the call, and you'd be like, "Guys, I fucking need you." I'm like, "What's up, Santos?" You'd be like, "Dude, I have a flat tire." I go, "Okay, no problem, man. What's the year, make, and model of your Jeep out there?" And you tell me, and I'm like, "All right, I'm on my way." And on my way to you, Santos, I would hit like a parking lot, a Walmart parking lot, or hit a swap meet parking lot. I'd look for that same Jeep of yours, and I would fucking steal a tire off that guy's Jeep, leave it up there in blocks, and show up to you with a fully inflated spare tire to save the day. I was that kind of guy. I would be there for you 100%. I only ask if you don't ask me where I got it.
No problem.
I know. Good guy to call. You jammed up, man. Oh my gosh. Oh. And then after hitting bottom, I ended up in a state licensed mental institution. I ended up at the Farley Center in Williamsburg, man.
Jiminy Chris.
I know. And it's funny. I wasn't happy about being there. My story ended up there. I remember this therapist, Dre Summers, was my therapist, and I remember, gosh, this guy was great. I remember watching him come into work that day, and he had a cup of coffee. And that's what he came to work with that day.
Whose coffee cup is that?
Dude, look at this motherfucker.
Look at that. Jumping with some Santos. A gift I gave to Dr. Dice.
Thank you, sir. Dude, that therapist came to work with a cup of coffee that day, and that motherfucker helped save me from myself with a cup of coffee and him sitting there talking to me. My whole life, I wanted to be there for someone, and I would show up with turnouts, H gear, M4, kit bags, gurney, all this shit I'd used to try to be the hero. And this therapist showed up with a cup of coffee, and he saved my ass. Dude, it blew me away, and that left an impression on me. When I got out of therapy, I entered into a 12-step recovery program. I worked through that. My second year of recovery, I kind of realized that, you know, it when you sit down across from someone else and you're honest and you communicate, you touch, and in an intimate way you share and you open up to each other, that's something that I never thought I would be good at. And I remember telling my sponsor that I think I want to be like a therapist. It was even weird for me to say that because I was never in my life path. I never strived to be a counselor or a therapist. And he says, all right, well, let's go back to school. And so, a year into my recovery, I went back to school and I went to TCC. And here in Virginia Beach, I got my associates in social services. I transferred to OU. I got my undergraduate in human services. I stayed on, got my master's in counseling. At that point, I had 5 years of recovery under my belt. I had my CSAC, my license to work as a substance abuse counselor. And I went back to the Farley Center and I asked those guys, hey, 5 years ago on this very day, July 29th, you guys helped save my life. Can I have a job? And they hired me. And I got to work with that same therapist, Ray Summers, who fucking saved my life. And over that next year, I busted my chaps, becoming a therapist, worked with groups, kind of fell in love with the whole idea of, being on this side of the room with another addict alcoholic, talking to him. I remember on a 1 year in that Ray Summers went on vacation and asked me to cover his group. I remember sitting in his chair in the room, same room that I was in when I was a patient, and watching another addict walk in and sit down in the same seat I sat in. And I was kind of overcome with this feeling of, wow, everything in my entire life had to happen exactly the way it happened in order for me to end up right here with this guy. It was, I guess, the closest I ever come to realizing I had a calling. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. From there, I worked there for I think 5 years. I developed a military program for them there. I realized there was a couple gaps I realized in the counseling world. One, there was a gap in the unique ways that veterans need help in therapy. So I helped them develop a program just for law enforcement, first responder, and veterans. I also noticed that counseling as a whole did not really have a full understanding of 12-step recovery. And that was interesting to me. And so later in my master's, I began to kind of delve back into really looking into the embedded theory found in 12-step recovery. I think 7 years in my recovery, I went back to school for my PhD. And again, to Old Dominion University, I got my doctorate in counseling and supervision. And I began teaching at OU, continued working with the Farley Center, and presenting regionally and nationally on the embedded theory found in 12-step recovery. That kind of really, it opened my mind up to like, wow, how can we harness what's going on in 12-step recovery programs for more of the population? How can we get therapists involved? So I began developing, I call it the holistic change model. And it's a theory of a model of recovery that therapists can use to assist a patient who's going through 12-step recovery programs. To kind of help the therapists be on the same page, understand and support them as they transition through the 12 steps of recovery. Additionally, this model could be used by a therapist for someone who was, say they were averse to 12-step recovery programs and they wanted to still enjoy some of the benefits of that program. The therapist could use this holistic change model to kind of help carry them through that same journey. That's also in the book. I draw parts of my story out and show how 12-step recovery was at work in my story. I also demonstrate how the holistic change model plays a part in that same, story development.
Sure. I don't want to have, you're almost telling the whole book. I don't want you to get too much in it, but how about, I have a question. You talked about aliens or paranormal activity.
Good question. This is not that kind of book.
All right, just never know, because I know you never know.
I know. And believe me, I have not told you the whole book.
I know. Good.
But some of this I want to get out there because, like I said, when you fight with publishers, they try to cut out like everything that's illegal. And I'm trying to tell them, guys, everything I did was illegal. I mean, that was really, I wasn't a good guy.
But is the book already written?
It's already written.
And the book, and say again the title.
The title, After the Trident, a Navy SEAL's Descent into Meth, Mayhem, and Madness.
Okay, now do you know the process? If everything goes approved, I know you say the websites, it's going to be on a certain website. Will they also be on Amazon and stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be out there. When you go back and forth, about what stories can leave in, what they can leave out, what's appropriate for everyone. I mean, there's like morality clauses. There's stuff I never heard of, and it's funny me getting into this on a Zoom meeting with an editor, arguing like we gotta keep this in the book. So yeah. So believe me, everyone out there, I'm really pushing to get as much as I possibly in, be honest I can as possible. Because
how long did it take you to get this book? Like, amazing.
Yeah, it's actually been working on it for 4 years.
Oh wow!
4 years.
Holy moly!
I know. And anyone who's written a book out there, my hat's off to you. It's hard to do. For me, it was also a very reflective process for me to go back through my whole childhood, and kind of revisit all those things I've done. There was a lot of healing involved in that. But yeah.
Do you find it therapeutic about talking about it?
It is.
Yeah.
And much of my recovery was kind of covering the same stuff and really owning my story, not shutting the door on my past, but really being open to it and using it to help others. And that's kind of one of the tenets of recovery is that instead of shutting the door on your past, you own your shit. And then you share with others that hopefully gives them hope that they too can find some recovery. Also, what I'm doing now, many of you might have seen a lot of my reels I'm throwing out. I'm dropping little bits of my story out there, putting on Facebook, putting on X, it's on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm trying to get little bits out there so that you can get a taste of what's coming in the book ahead.
Yeah, I've seen it. Because like each one is in a chapter?
Each one is not a whole chapter, but each one's like a story. I'll drop a reel, like a little teaser.
Yeah.
It's a link to the YouTube story, and I'm just putting it out there.
And what's your X account name?
You can find my anything search Dr. Dice on any platform.
Okay.
Pop right up.
And talking about this, since we're at the end of the episode, talk about Bishop and Dice defense.
Yes. About 3 years ago, I had a sponsee of mine that I had sponsored for almost a decade. This motherfucker, Scott Bishop, he's a beast. We got together and he comes to me and he says, you got a crazy story, guys. You've been working in the field for almost a decade now, working with veterans, law enforcement, first responders. I've been working contracts. I know the industry. Let's put a business together. And this is our model. We roll into a police department, fire department, a VA. We'll supply tactics training, uniform. We'll talk shop. We'll come in and just, here are the latest toys the SEALs are playing with. We'll wine and dine them. We'll get them like hooked on the gear and just kind of shoot the shit for them for like a whole year. On year 2, we'll roll into the mental health services once they trust us. Because the problem with these populations, our nation's heroes, the society's heroes, is that these guys rarely reach out for help. It's like literally their dukes are up 24/7. I got it. I can handle my shit. They don't want to talk about it. These are the same populations that have the highest suicide rate. These are the populations that are hurting. And if you can get in there and you can talk with them, you can get them to kind of drop their guard, open up. It takes the trust.
Yeah.
And Bishop and Dice Defense is about earning that trust to get help to those who need.
And they're all about selling these shirts. Tactical Jesus. Did you draw this?
I did.
Tactical Jesus. You have Tactical Gandhi, Tactical Satan, Tactical Buddha coming soon, hopefully.
And the story behind that, I do a lot of presentations. Check out the YouTube page. And in a lot of my lectures, I have these characters. What would Tactical Gandhi do? What would Tactical Jesus do? And these characters, and they're almost like they were the devil on my shoulder, and I had Tactical Jesus, and I had Tactical Gandhi in the middle. Because sometimes doing nothing's the right answer. There's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and I really don't know what to do. So just don't do anything right now. Just
doing nothing sometimes is the right thing. Just let things just manifest.
Press pause. Quit trying to fix it. Just let go.
So talk about what's the name of your website, the Bishop and Dice website?
BishopandDiceDefense.com. Yeah.
And that's where you get all these shirts.
Check out the shirts, links to my YouTube page. If you're fire department, law enforcement, VA, and you want to get, hook up your guys, click on our Bishop and Dice link. There's some avenues for getting involved and doing business with us.
All right. And thank you so much, man. They hook me up with this coin. It's a badass coin here, man. And I really appreciate this gift here. This right here. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything else before we call this up, man?
Hey, listen, my party message, no matter how far down the ladder of life you've tumbled, no matter how much you're keeping your shit wired, but there's cracks beginning to show because inside you're hurting. Listen, we all need help sometimes. And the biggest thing you can do is let someone else carry you for a moment. You've reached out, you've carried others. You've been there for your friends and family, you've been there for everyone. But sometimes the biggest gift you can give to someone else is let them give you a hand. Don't be afraid to reach out, man.
All right. Now, Dr. Dice, if people want to follow you, are you on Dr. Dice on Instagram and Facebook? YouTube and X?
YouTube, X, and on our Patreon link. So
Patreon?
Yeah, we can have various levels in which you can get involved with our mission.
Okay. That being said, as well, please follow me on Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I'm on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music.
Damn.
And if you want to be a guest, please let me know. And I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah. Thanks, Anto.